The case file for the disappearance of Marcus and Sarah Vance, filed in October of 1978, remains officially open with the Olympic National Forest Ranger District. It sits in a yellowing cabinet, tucked between standard log, poaching infractions and abandoned vehicle reports. Officially, they got turned around on the HOH River Trail. Officially, hypothermia and the unforgiving moss draped maze of the temperate rainforest claimed them. Paul Henderson knew better. Paul was the search and rescue volunteer who found their camera. It was found 3 miles off trail, wedged deep in the fork of a decaying cedar stump, completely untouched by the persistent Pacific Northwest drizzle. When the precinct developed the film, the frames leading up to the end were mundane. Sarah holding a steaming thermos, Marcus pointing at a banana slug, a scenic shot of towering hemlocks. Then came the anomalies. Frame 30. 4 was blurred, as if Marcus had been running. The flash had caught the reflection of 2 amber, luminous orbs low to the ground, too wide apart to be a bobcat, too high to be a raccoon, and reflecting a dull, intelligent amber that no known predator in Washington state possessed. Frame 30. 5 was worse. It was a close-up, shaky and underexposed, but the subject filled the lens. It wasn't a bear. It was a massive, wedge-shaped head covered in coarse, reddish, brown hair matted with grey moss. A heavy brow ridge jutted over deep-set, sunken eyes. The mouth was slightly parted, revealing flat, human-like molars. It didn't look snarling or monstrous. It looked profoundly ancient and impossibly massive. Frame 30. 6 was just a smudge of dark fur, and the blurred motion of the camera hitting the forest floor. Paul had been on that search. He remembered the smell most of all. It wasn't the scent of a dead animal, nor the rich, damp earth of the forest. It was a dense, suffocating mix of wet wool, stagnant swamp water, and crushed onion. 10 years later, in the winter of 1988, Paul was back out there. He had quit the search teams long ago, but the woods had a gravitational pull on men who thought they knew their secrets. He was checking a remote snare line near the foothills when the forest went dead silent. In the Pacific Northwest, silence is heavy. The chatter of jays stops. The wind dies in the canopy. It is the vacuum left by an apex predator. Paul froze, his hand tightening on the wooden stock of his rifle. 20 yards away, standing entirely motionless between 2 colossal Douglas firs, was a silhouette. It blocked the grey, filtered light of the afternoon. Easily 8 feet tall, its shoulders were broad enough to span the gap between 2 men. It didn't crouch or scurry. It simply watched him with an unsettling, statuesque patience. Paul didn't raise his gun. Something primal in his brain screamed that doing so would be like a mouse threatening a freight train. He looked past the creature's broad chest, down to the forest floor at its feet. Half buried in the pine needles, stark white and weathered, was the plastic strap of a 1970s era Nikon camera. Attached to a scrap of rotted blue nylon webbing, the creature tilted its massive cone-shaped head. A low infrasonic hum vibrated in Paul's chest, rattling his teeth, a sound more felt than heard, like the rumble of a distant freight train idling in the dark. Then, with a single, effortless step, it melted into the wall of green ferns and shadows. There was no crashing of brush, no snapping of heavy timber, just the sudden, rushing sound of the wind returning to the trees. Paul didn't look for the camera strap. He turned and walked briskly back to his truck, locking the doors with trembling hands. He never spoke of what he saw that day to the sheriff, and he never returned to the HOH River Trail. The Vances were never found. Neither was Paul's peace of mind. Out there, beneath the endless canopy of the Olympics, the trees kept their own counsel, and the things that walked among them knew how to keep a secret.